What's up, everybody? Welcome to the next installment of the Dan Dunn Show. Today we are looking at
Facebook.
Facebook. Facebook had a tough time through its last earnings. This go around, we're going to see what's going on.
Maybe they can turn it around.
Hey, you can't
Look at the numbers.
You can't cuck the Zuck, right?
He's he's a guy.
He's a guy.
So let's start with the charts.
All right,
into the nitty gritty charts.
So very simple. Want to keep everything very simple. So you got this long-term trend line that seems to just be very steady growth stock, very very sustainable, very healthy looking, and we're back on it a little bit here. Actually, it's kind of weird that it happened like that, but you have this line, which is the explanation of what every FANG stock went through. It went through an unsustainable amount of growth, an unsustainable amount of percentage gains. They went straight up the hill. When it fell off, it actually came up and touched this line again, right at its earnings, and it fell. It absolutely plummeted, is really the word. So I don't see this line coming back into play again, not for a long time anyway. And I could see with a good earnings report, a stable earnings report, we'll bounce around down here, we'll do something, but long term we'll be on this line. So for a long term chart looker, if anything bad happens, obviously, there seems to be a support level right here. But if that were to happen, that's bad news for Facebook. Anyway, we'll look into the financials, see if we can't get into some better detail about what to expect, what not to expect, what to look for. For that, we're gonna go to Bob and yep.
So Facebook's financials, as Dan mentioned, the last quarter really, their last earnings report really set off a sale of the stock. It went down 20% in one day. It was big news when it happened.
Huge.
A lot of people actually looked at it at the time as the start of like a crash or something like that. People have been kind of antsy all year, and Facebook going down 20% is definitely something worth noting on the calendar when you look back on 2018. So we're going to look at its Q2 results, what exactly happened to the stock.
Break it down a little bit.
Yep. Just going through their daily active users. I think a more accurate measure is the monthly active users, but we can start with the daily. Dan made a really good point. We were looking at this chart the first time. The most important numbers here in terms of revenue growth are the U.S. numbers. And as you can see, Facebook here went up, peaked at 185, and has been flat ever since. So users have been pretty consistent at 185. A lot of the growth has been coming in the South Pacific. Actually, in the earnings somewhere, they said it was like the Philippines. Not really high revenue generating areas is where this growth is coming from. You can also see Europe is also following that same U.S. trend in terms of daily active users, where it's definitely flattening out. Now, it's also worth noting that this is not including Instagram. This is just Facebook daily users. The monthly active users, I think, is also more of an accurate trend because people check it once a week or something like that. But it's the same lines. Europe actually steady increasing. The U.S. Pretty flat to a little steady increase. You see the massive increases in the Asia Pacific and the rest of the world. Again, they're not real revenue generating areas, but they pump up these numbers for sure. Now we get to revenue. You see the revenue growth, kind of flattening out, right? That looks like a little bit of a flat out. I don't know how much more revenue they can actually get.
Yeah, it might be topping.
Yeah, it might be topping. It doesn't look like growth for sure.
It wouldn't surprise me to see another higher candle, though.
Okay. By geography, this just shows you how important the North American users are, for sure. You see here, they make up, even though they're only a small percentage of the actual users, they make up a huge percent of the actual revenue. And then look at Europe. These are inverse of what you saw in the first two charts when it went through users. And that's why the U.S. is so important and to them, and it's important they keep that going. The same thing. These are their, payments. Here is a pretty interesting chart that we were looking at. They make $26 per user in the U.S. I think that's pretty high.
That's extremely high.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good number. And you see the rest of the world. The Philippines, one of their biggest growers, $262 per user. That's not going to sustain massive growth that the Facebook stocks were actually going for. Expenses, their cash flow and their income is actually pretty solid. I would like to see maybe more higher of a cash flow, but nothing really to complain about there. In terms of making profits, they were a solid company in Q2. Earnings, revenue growth, that's the big problem here. That's the story when you look at the Q2 earnings. And they also have a lot of headwinds as well. The story about Facebook, you cannot just look at the finances. You also have to go into the transcript. And Mark Zuckerberg, I mean, he spent, I would say, 60% of the time of his last earnings call talking about fake news in the elections and how he's going to limit it and make more transparency. But really, at the end of the day, what that is it's a loss of a revenue stream.
Yeah.
In my opinion. So, Q2 13.2 billion. They're trading at a 22 price to earnings. All their revenue comes from ad money. They don't really have other services. So I mean, those are the finances.
Yeah, so they got $2.8 billion cash on hand. They're trading at a 22.13 price to earnings ratio.
Yeah.
And I just don't think that that's a lot of cash on hand for a company like Facebook.
Me neither.
2.8 billion. That I think that I personally would want to see a little bit more cash flow. I don't think that the revenue per share. I personally kind of think that the numbers, the daily users of Facebook is decreasing by the quarter.
Yeah.
And I think that the ad revenue is going to disappear over time.
Yeah.
And I think that $26 per user is going to look more like it looked like Q2 of like 16. I think that long term, I think that's what's going to be the ones that go down.
What's interesting is that they have Instagram, right? And a lot more people use Instagram, but we didn't really get a good number about how much money Instagram users get.
What they're expecting out of it.
Yeah, what they expect out of Instagram. And so without those numbers, it's really hard to predict future growth.
Yeah.
The leader of Instagram, that Kevin guy, he left. He got fired. He left. It was probably not a good situation for either Facebook or Kevin. So
he just left.
And he's gone. He's doing his own thing now. And so what does that mean moving forward? Hold on. Someone's just blowing me the hell up right now.
Who the fuck is that?
I don't know. Just ignore it. Sorry. Anyway. Should we restart?
We're so far into it.
We're so far into it. That's my fault, guys. The phone, I should have put it on silent before. Headwinds. Definite headwinds. The EU, which is a big revenue growth. So let's go back to the EU here. Transition to the EU, and you see here it's 3.3. I would say it's about a third. It looks like, or maybe like a fifth or a fourth of the earnings, something like that. It's a substantial growth. Yeah, they have a lot of problems there. There's a big currency problem in Europe, and I think you can't overestimate the bureaucratic nightmare that's going on with Europe and internet users and their whole new rules and things like that. I mean, Europe is in my opinion the worst place to do business in the world. It's run by Brussels, who has no common sense and very down on Brussels. I don't like it at all. The EU is probably going to fold in a very traumatic way. Let me get back to the transition here. And that revenue is not going to be sustainable, and I think it's going to shrink pretty rapidly over time.
I think you're absolutely right with that.
The other problem, I mean, they dropped in their Q2 earnings, they dropped forward forecasts. They say currency headwinds and the EU regulations are going to be a real problem for them moving forward. And, the EU is not a business-friendly environment, and I would expect that to definitely decrease. Their plans for increasing revenue. Now, this was interesting. So, they invested a lot in virtual VR and AR, and so those are things that I don't think Facebook should be doing personally. Right? They're a social network.
I saw that they had some thing actually where it's like an app, and if you can't be there, at least you can feel you're there or something.
Yeah. That's what they're going for.
And so I guess you'll put on this helmet and. All of a sudden you'll be in a meadow with mountains or whatever, but dude,
that's not Facebook's core.
That's not what it's about.
That's not what Facebook should be. I just don't think that's Facebook's core, and I'm not going to put that on the plus side. Right?
I wouldn't put it on the negative side either, but I wouldn't.
And they're pumping a lot of money into it, and they already know that money is not going to be making them money, and so it's a waste of money, in my opinion. I don't think that they should be on the forefront of augmented reality or virtual reality. It's not core to their business. What they do plan on increasing revenue, according to her name, was the COO. Not David, it was Cheryl, I believe. Yeah, Sheryl Sandberg, the COO, who's actually, I've watched videos of her. She's pretty impressive. She's a good leader. She said that continued with ads as is increased revenue growth, which we were talking about before. We think there's too many ads on Facebook as it is.
Yeah, I don't go.
Yeah, very intrusive.
It's harder. It's harder to get what you want because you got to go around everything.
Yeah.
Things will pop up in your like everyone uses Facebook. Everyone knows what we're talking about.
Yeah.
The notifications are trash.
Yeah, it's not good. You scroll through it and you see things that really aren't relevant to you, and they try to sell you shoes. Or if you search something on Google like a week ago, it will be there. Whatever it happens to be, and it's usually at the top too.
Yeah.
So, if they want to, I could see them keeping it the same, but I don't see. I don't like the increased ad usage. It definitely affects my viewing. And then the other thing that they had is that they're saying that Facebook Messenger, they were talking about there was like 8 million messages on Facebook Messenger, so they're trying to create a way to sell ads through Facebook Messenger, which I'm telling you right now, if they are reading my messages to people, and then if I say that like, oh, where you want to go to dinner, and I get like a notification about dinner restaurants in my area, I will never use that app again. Never use that again. That would be the straight end of Facebook, and that would be deleted off of all my platforms. Right? I mean, you can't have that.
Yeah, that's a little intrusive.
Yeah, that's intrusive. That's just like, it's all right that you know it, but you're gonna sell me on it like right then and there. What they use in their
and then you would have a company pay to be the number one on that list.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
it's like a Google search almost.
I can see where the revenue is.
Yeah.
Obviously, but you're gonna lose. You got one user that's gone for sure.
Yeah.
They said that what they were going to do though with it is they brought up the example of like Legos, and so if you go on the Lego page, or they were able to do a search for like people over the age of 25 who mentioned something about Legos, and then Lego would send you a message on Facebook trying to talk to you.
Yeah, well, no thank you, Lego.
Yeah,
right?
that's intrusive. I think that's intrusive. I'm not a big fan of it. I'm sure businesses would love it. They're going to lose a lot of users.
I'm not. Facebook is not the medium in between me and a company. I mean, that's ridiculous that they're even going down that road. That's not what he was built to do. And it just foreshadows the fall.
Yeah, let's see what their cash flow is. We always say that cash is king. That should be the name of the show, Cash is King. If the Dan Dunn Show wasn't so perfect.
Bro, it's the Dan Dunn Show.
Page 7 on this report was the cash flow. Yeah, I'll get to it first, though.
But,
that's supplemental cash flow is page 6 now. Here it is. So let's transition to cash flow here real quick. And you can see, the cash flow is up from a year ago. There's no question about it. Net income looking pretty good. So the financials of Facebook are surprisingly solid. When I first started looking at this, I was expecting to see a lot of debt and a lot of negativity. Yeah. And it really isn't as bad as I thought it was. It's not perfect, and you would like to see it better. And it's definitely a company that, it's not a blue chip stock. You know what I mean? It's not like Apple.
Dude, for some tech companies, they do have a lot of money.
Yeah, they do have. For tech companies, they're very established, mature. Yeah. They do a very good job with that. I think moving forward, though, I mean, they were talking about in here, the guy's name was David something, the COO, how they're building 8 new data centers, and they only have 8 right now. And so that increase in expense, and then when you talk about how they're going to be, users in the U.S. kind of went down, and if they don't get that ad revenue out of Instagram, which they didn't spell out how they were going to do that, that's going to be a problem for Facebook. They're taking on a lot more liabilities. There's going to be a lot more debt. Yeah. And just running 8 data centers are a huge operation, and the cost for data centers are going up too. So if your plan is to build data centers 1 year, 2 years from now, 8 of them to double your data centers, the cost per data center, you have to figure that's going to rise. And I would expect on each quarterly earnings report that their expected cost of these data centers are going to keep increasing. And I wouldn't be surprised at the end if they only build 4. Or if they back out of them, because I don't think their cash flow doesn't justify adding 8 data centers.
Dude, they said that they were going to build 8. I could see them building the 8. I mean, I don't know.
Interest rates are going up. It's going to be harder to borrow capital for it. It's interesting. It's an interesting part of Facebook moving forward that, to acquire all that debt at this point in time, that might be something. I don't know if it's really worth it for them. I like companies like, they're like what Amazon does, where they rent warehouse workers and things like that. I think there's the less that they have on the books and use other people's services, that might be more economical for them. For them to go double their data centers in such a short amount of time, it's expensive.
Yeah, it is expensive.
Yeah.
But
You long or short Facebook?
long term, I'm shorting it. I don't think that they should be bring. Dude, you hear what they're doing, man. They're trying to sell. They're trying to use you as a selling point to companies. Then people just aren't going to be a part of that.
You don't like the idea of it.
Yeah, I don't like the idea of it, and I could see that people in Asian countries might fall for that shit or something. Like if that's all they know, but I don't see that working here.
Let's circle back to that's all we know about Facebook. This is something interesting that I read online, and I've heard before too, is that Facebook gave away all those free services. Like they built internet connections in like sub-Saharan Africa and like India, and they brought the internet to where people didn't have internet before.
And gave them little phones.
That connected to it, but those phones only worked on Facebook. And so when somebody in these poorer parts, like how I would say I'm going on Google or I'm going on the internet, everybody over there says that they're going on Facebook. That is the internet to them.
Yeah.
So I mean that's an incredible achievement, I think.
Achievement, dude. It's kind of like giving to charity.
Yeah.
But,
well, I think he was able to write it off because of charity, but it's a huge. I think that's a huge revenue if the internationals improve.
I don't think the money's there for them to improve.
You don't think it's there to improve?
I don't think it's there to improve.
Yeah. They're all over the world. Facebook is a global. That's another thing.
It is a global company, but it only has $2.8 billion on hand, cash on hand.
Cash on hand's important.
And if it's a global company, you would expect that to be more up towards $50 billion on hand. But that's my opinion on it. Long term, I'm short. What we know of Facebook today, if they dwarf into something else, or if they take, if they move on to it being just Instagram, and if they grow up like that, then I could see them sticking around. But Facebook, as we know it, as that blue web page with advertisements scrolling past you and shit, and trying to sell me to people, literally sell my content like that. I'm just gonna stop using them, and I'm not the only one who's gonna start doing that, and that's just a very honest point of view. And I'm not worried about privacy or anything like that. It's bullshit that someone's trying to profit off of me like that, dude.
It's not what I signed up for.
Yeah,
when I signed up for Facebook, this is not what Facebook was.
Exactly.
And the more I use it, the less I like it. I mean, that really is the honest truth of it. And the more you read about what they do and all those things, and they keep trying to backtrack on like, oh yeah, we might have messed that up a little bit, or
you know
what I mean?
Oh no,
oops.
dude, it's like dealing with an Italian guy that did
and Mark Zuckerberg
going straight downhill.
Mark Zuckerberg's full of himself. Let's be honest. That guy thinks. I mean,
he stole the idea in the first place.
People think that he think of him as a robot. That guy, I don't know.
Exactly, dude. That's dude, and. We're not going to talk politics, but he's building fucking walls out in his Hawaiian state, dude.
Is that what he's doing?
Dude, he's got some big ass fucking chunk of land in like one of the private Hawaiian islands, like Kailua or something, one of the fucking not big ones, and he's got this massive estate, and he's building some 10-foot stone wall wrapped all the way around it for privacy.
So one of the Facebook really is harping in one of the things that
bought all the land around it and shit. It's actually impressive.
Yeah, I mean, Mark Zuckerberg.
It's cool.
For everything that we could say bad about him, good for you, man. I mean,
dude, you fucking.
You're an American dream. You're an American Titan. You've made it. Congratulations.
I'm not kissing his ass on this show though. So
let me read you what this. So all that let me read you what this pompous this guy said. Right. Since the 1970s, there has been a long decline in people joining physical groups around the world, and that has contributed to the broad feeling of loneliness and isolation. But if we can help 1 billion people be part of something meaningful, that can reverse this trend. Boom.
Did he just like contact his inner like Plato or something?
Dude, honestly,
that's like some fucking philosophy.
He is healing loneliness for 1 billion people. How can't you invest in that?
I'll tell you how. Because you aren't gonna fucking.
I know. It is what it is.
Yeah, and dude, his whole thing on Congress, man, it's just, the old saying's true. There's no such thing as bad press, right?
Yeah, I guess.
That was bad press, dude.
Yeah.
That was bad press. Talk about just completely fucking. At least be a dick to Congress and tell them to fuck off a little bit. And stand your ground a little bit. And Congress isn't going to throw Mark Zuckerberg in jail.
Well, the problem is, and a little bit of politics, but let's keep it a little broad. Is if you don't go to Congress and you don't answer their questions and kiss their ass, and you're in a tech company. You're just asking them what's going to happen is they're going to make some federal regulation, bureaucracy, or they're going to throw your ass under the control of the FCC.
Let's whip, bro. I'm moving to China.
No,
yeah.
you can't do that, man, because we're going to be the ones paying the price. You know what I mean? I don't want that. And so it is what it is. You know what I mean? It was bad. I think that the fake news thing, the Russians, they're making a solid effort to fight it. We'll see what happens. I think, you do not want happening in the U.S. what's happening in Europe right now with just the growth of this bureaucratic nightmare system that's going to end up costing the consumers jobs.
That's Europe's a fucking disaster.
It's a disaster. And if Congress put it under the FCC, we would have a very similar situation. That's why net neutrality is so important and all that stuff. So.
Anyway, you bullish or bearish? We're 20 minutes in.
Bearish. Yeah, I don't think they're going to do well.
Yeah. Neither do I. I think it's a sinking ship.
Yeah, I think that if they do well, they're not going to go up to where they were before, and if they do bad,
they aren't going to go on top of that trend line again.
No. I think that trend line was a very accurate perception.
And anyway, this is the Dan Dunn Show. We ran long here. Sorry about that. Again, this is recorded on Sunday of this week. The earnings is going to be further in the week. What are they? The
30th.
30th. He's going to California. It'll just be me. So, but anyway, thank you for watching. I appreciate your time. Like and subscribe, all that good stuff. Have a good night, everybody. Hopefully Facebook does well, and hopefully we go 4 for 4, 5 for 5, 3 for 3, whatever the number ends up being. But we'll be here to answer for a loss too. But disclaimer.
Oh, well, stop recording. We'll add it later.
All right.